Jack Mitchell, we are into the top 10. Get ready. We are actually breaking the top 10 up in between an episode of 5 and another episode of 5, as the people just heard. Allows us to unpack some really hurt feelings a little bit more.
That's good. I'm going to need a break, judging from how the last one ended. I needed to stop then, and so, yeah, that's probably good that we're breaking these up.
The folks just heard it, but we'll give them a reminder. Games 10 through 6. 3 games from Matt Rhule's first season here, and they started off with 2023 Minnesota at number 10, 2023 Wisconsin at number 9, 2023 Iowa at number 8, and then we moved to 2022, the loss to Wisconsin at number 7, and finally, a game that I thought was a contender for the number 1 game on the entire list. The loss to Iowa to finish up 2021 comes in at number 6. We will talk about that in a little bit, but we begin with the first game of the Matt Rhule era, the loss to Minnesota on the Thursday night. Jack, you talked about it at the end of last week's episode. What was the new stat that you came up with? The
craziness of celebration missed.
Yes, and remember, so we are into the I-80 club by the time we're in 2023. This is our second year. We're excited for the season. We were going to do, as we always called it, the champagne room. We were going to do a post-game show on the Thursday night, and obviously we were unable to do that. And I don't know what your big takeaway is from this game. I think as I close my eyes, one of the first things that I think back to is, Jeff Sims, he ain't it. This was a rough performance from him, but it also had some of the hallmarks of the 23 season where the defense plays great for like 58 minutes, and then a couple of drives don't go for them, and Minnesota's able to walk Nebraska off in regulation. What a brutal way to start the year.
My big takeaway from this was it doesn't matter who the coach is. It doesn't matter who the players are. You can change them out as much as you want, but the script is going to be the same. Because this game, the reason it's number 10, Josh, and I thought it could be top 5, is just because, and if it's against someone who, other than Minnesota, or maybe there's some other little tweaks here and there, it could easily be in the top 5, but it's got so many of the hits, so many of the play the hits that we've talked about over the course of this series, from the late game turnover, right, to the defense having played well the entire game and then all of a sudden giving up things that they hadn't before, to the special teams, right, to a field goal that you don't think they're going to make, that they make. I mean, there's probably more beyond that.
Yeah, and one of the other things, so in our game importance scale, right, we have these factors built in where if you're losing another game in a row that, would get you into bowl eligibility, that's going to be higher on the list. But one of the things that we built into this was a loss in an opener actually gets a higher score than just a regular old loss. And I think that that's a really good category to include, not just because I helped create the formula, but mainly because there's like so much excitement, right? And that this for you, Thursday night game. And I know that often over the years, you have discussed your frustration of losing on a non-traditional Saturday and how it just torpedoes your enjoyment for everything else that is to come. And this loss did that for you. This game also, Jack, has one of the highest post-game win probabilities on the entire list. 95.3% chance. If you just take all of the plays in this game and you shuffle them up, Nebraska's going to win this game 95% of the time, and they somehow lost it. And this factor was not built into the formula, but continuation of Scott Frost type losses very much could be something that we discuss, because how often have we mentioned that over the last 2 years? Not only did they lose, it's not just that they lost, it's how they lost. And this game very much had it's not that they lost, it's how they lost type of performance.
Right. And another key element, incredible catch, right? Minnesota makes just maybe one of the most amazing plays that an opponent made this entire era.
100%.
And they review it, and one thing that we haven't talked about like a lot is reviews that you watch once and are going to go against you, and then you show it 5 times. I believe there was one against USC in one of the previous episodes where that happened. That's also kind of an underrated thing.
That's a good
call. You can throw in here. There's always one of those, it feels like, in a lot of these games. But yeah, that's it. And it just felt like, again, you're right. When we talked about this formula, I actually suggested that we give extra weight to games that were on, that had Nebraska in the focus on national TV for some reason, or on a Thursday or a week 0, which, by the way, if you go back and look, right, we've got Illinois in 2019 or 2021, right?
Northwestern
We've got
the next year.
in Ireland.
Yep.
We've got Illinois Friday night.
Yep.
Right. We've
Yep.
got now this Minnesota Thursday night.
Non-traditional days
We've got
to lose.
all of the Iowa games.
All the Iowa games, Black Friday.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's, several in addition to that. So that's 9, right? 9 out of 10. And so that puts us at 13 so far that we're on non-traditional days. And there's probably, are there any others that I'm forgetting in addition to that? That's a lot, right?
Just to remind you, Jack, the opener this year on a Thursday. Yikes.
Yeah, there was somebody who was not happy about that.
Yeah, and his name is Jack Mitchell. Nebraska was up in this game 10-3 at the very end, and they turned the ball over. Minnesota ties it on the crazy play, and Nebraska turns it over again, and Minnesota walks them off. So not only did they lose, but they somehow lose in regulation by a score of 13-10, which would become a very familiar margin of defeat throughout the 2023 season. Speaking of the season, let's move on up to game number 9. The overtime loss to Wisconsin, and of course this followed the Maryland game. We talked about that on last week's episode where Nebraska gives this one away. So by this point in time, they're now 5-5. They've lost 2 in a row. They need to pick up a win if they're going to get to bowl eligibility. And Jack, of all the games that are on this list where Nebraska loses, I don't know if they got off to a better start than they got off to in this one. They go down the field, they score a touchdown, they get a quick stop. They go down the field, they score a touchdown. They get a long pass and a long run from Chubba Purdy. And then they have the ball, 4th down in Wisconsin territory. They decide to go for it because they are trying to end this thing early. They don't get it. Wisconsin scores the first touchdown of their day. And eventually, Nebraska scores on the first touchdown of regulation. They score on the final touchdown of regulation. But in the middle of the game, their offense was absolutely putrid. Of course, goes to overtime. Of course, Nebraska doesn't win, and they fall to 5-6 with another loss to a bad Wisconsin team, by the way. This Wisconsin team was not very good.
Right. This one could have been a top 5 1-2 for me because you've got that factor, which was Nebraska starts out gangbusters in this team. We were talking just a little bit ago with the Andy Janovich game last week about the top plays that went well for Nebraska. To me, that Chubba Purdy run would probably be in the conversation as well because it happens and you're like, they found the answer.
Yeah.
Right? A mobile, a running quarterback, a little bit of a running quarterback, right? He does have that Purdy blood in him, and this is going to be it. And then they had the big Jalen Lloyd, I believe it was Jalen Lloyd, right? Had the big play, and you're like, oh my gosh. It's not necessarily the poetic way of ending it. It's just, we're going to get everything back tonight by they're going to do a sad jump around, right? It's going to be in a night game. It's going to be 1/3 full by the end. Nebraska's going to be celebrating their bowl game. Craziness of party mist here is pretty high for this one, especially because at one point I thought it was going to be a blowout.
Yeah.
The offense it didn't look like Wisconsin's defense was going to be there to play.
Yeah. Honestly, in a way, it is a preview of what was to come 1 year later when they actually do that versus Wisconsin. And it does turn into a party where Nebraska's offense just keeps scoring the entire time. In this game, the offense could not keep scoring the entire time.
Yeah, for sure. And then, of course, the other thing, we talked about it earlier, the overcompensation maybe for the Maryland game before it, but a coaching decision late in the game and kind of feeling like you had to make a decision under pressure, and it didn't end up being the right one.
It is very much an answer to the previous week's game where they have the ball with timeouts to go, 1.5 minutes left, deep in Wisconsin territory, and they just decide to sit on the football and take it down, and they kick a field goal. And I get it, right? On one hand, you need to understand your personnel and say, we're not going to make the same mistake of last week. But gosh, try a little bit harder. Have maybe not throw the ball as much, but a little more urgency, I think, is what I wanted from them in that moment. By the way, Jack, 91.5% chance Nebraska had to win this game in terms of the overall post-game win probability.
And if they get that 4th down and score there, it's over.
They might run them off the field.
I assume so. 21s, and we'd be still partying today.
Yeah, we still would be. Up next, number 8, another game from 2023. And Jack, this was the 7th loss of the year. This was the 3rd loss by the exact same score of 13-10. We already talked about the Minnesota game a few minutes ago. This is a strange Iowa loss in my book because for a while, Nebraska is playing like a team that I just don't think they have any chance to really win the game, right? and then they get a big play near the end of the first half. The defense, as always, is making tremendous plays. It's a super, super cold game in Lincoln. I remember the entire thought process, I guess, for me was they're not going to find a way to win this game. And yet they had the ball at midfield after a takeaway with a chance to win in regulation. And not only did they not do that, they somehow lose in regulation as Iowa walks them off.
And then once again, the defense that had carried them all day against a backup quarterback, unexpected luck. I mean, the last 2 minutes of that game, you throw in almost every element that we've had. There was probably some replay that I'm forgetting about too. I mean, it was everything. And Deacon Hill, who ended up transferring, I believe, to like Utah Tech or something like that the next year after this. Man, that was, talk about a quick change, like you said, from going down to score that field goal. At worst, it's going to go to overtime.
At worst, it's going to go to OT.
Yep. How many we've said that a couple of times in this. At worst, it's going to go to overtime. No, not only is it not going to go to overtime, but Iowa's going to have that field goal. Oh yeah, and they're going to make it.
84.3% chance. That was Nebraska's max second half win probability in this football game. It's a wild one because throughout much of the first half and even early in the second, it's not looking like it's going to be that type of win. But you just said it. The defense and how they raise their level of play, again, for 50-something minutes, but at the end of the game, when they needed that one stop, not only does Iowa get into field goal range, they surprised Nebraska with a rush that gets them into field goal range. Because I think a lot of us were like, they got to throw, because at least if it's incomplete, the clock is going to stop. And right after that, you just know they're about to walk off Nebraska again.
And the whole day I said, they're not going to be able to, they can't run, right? And that's all they can do. So what will they do? They don't have a quarterback who can throw it.
Yeah.
They're not going to score. Once Nebraska got that Jalen Lloyd touchdown, I was like, wow. If they can get ahead, it's over because Iowa's offense can't do it. But yet they did one time. Remember that. Remember that, because I know that's coming back. I don't even have the next list of the next five, but there's a very similar theme coming up.
Yeah, and you just said something too. This was the Brian Ferentz season. Like, this was that, remember that, the drive for 325, like all the jokes. That was this offense. And Nebraska does a wonderful job throughout much of the process to do enough on that side of the ball. But when they needed to just make one play to give themselves another opportunity, they're unable to get a stop.
And did the Iowa kicker, they didn't have one of their vintage kickers, I don't think, in that game. No. It was a backup or some kind of a odd situation, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
And maybe, did he miss another one during the game, I almost think?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like, he comes up to kick that field goal. Maybe he's already missed one, but there's no field goal I've ever been more sure in my life.
100%.
That was going in. And I believe that was one where it looked like he might have missed it, I believe, or something. There was something odd with it as well, but I don't know. I get all these game-winning field goals.
They've been a lot of them, and stay tuned because we're going to talk about a few more of them as we move on. Let's go to game number 7 now, Jack, the 2022 Wisconsin game. So you said at the end of last week's episode, this was the one that you're like, wait a second, why is this game here? Jack, I agree with you. In terms of our top 20, I think that you can move some stuff around a little bit. This game, it does not have a lot of the juice, if you will, of being ranked this high because they had already missed out on bowl eligibility. This was a forgettable lost season for Nebraska football. But it just have it in terms of the math, it has like so many of the hallmarks of any of these Groin Kick type losses. And that it comes, of course, to Wisconsin, which was absolutely another brutal way to lose.
Right. But at the time, Wisconsin was in the same situation, right? And so, like, you even...
Correct.
I remember...
Jim Leonard was their coach at this game.
Jim Leonard was coaching for him, and I remember even going into this game thinking, man, if this is the time they beat Wisconsin, like, it's not going to feel like sweet. A real victory against Wisconsin. It's going to feel like it has an asterisk. And then, as always happens, the game is over, and I'm like, man, I wish I would have just not ever thought that thought because it was bad. It was not nearly... So go through the elements with me. Help me understand why taking out sort of the context of that season enhanced this. I mean, I remember the pass. If you tell me one play from this game, I can think right away. I believe it's swing pass to Chaz Malusi, who had a big, set him up to score probably the winning touchdown in that game, right?
So the thing that this game has that really helps it out is the max second half win probability. So Nebraska is above 90% at one point to win this game. So it has that. And it does have the rivalry factor. So Wisconsin, it being a Wisconsin game, is going to push it, and a 1-point loss. And so, if a loss is between 1 and 3 points, that throws it to the top. And so this had those elements, but it being Wisconsin kind of lifts it up enough. And so, while this game isn't like a perfect 10 across the board, it has enough of the high elements and enough elements that are just not low enough that it just kind of sneaks into the top 10. I would say of all of the math problems of this project, this was the one game where I was like, interesting. Because it's a brutal loss, but I'm with you. I mean, it was in an era full of brutal losses. This one, I think, easiest to maybe move on from, but I think that about a lot of the 2022 losses,
the formula couldn't factor in what we had just talked about, the context about both teams being already into a world of transition.
Correct.
At this point.
Yeah.
And I think that played into it, and there wasn't a bowl to play for, right? There was just kind of some pride of beating a injured Wisconsin team.
Correct.
Once again, to some degree, unused good luck once again.
Yeah. So let's get into the final game in this episode. A game that I thought was going to be number one, honestly. If you gave me the short list before this project, 2021 Iowa, for me, I thought that was going to be the number one football game. It is a slow motion car crash, as you just heard in the highlights in the first half of the episode, where Nebraska, you and I are in the building. This is the 4 Milt game where you and I raised, shout out to us, not to brag, over $10,000 that we donated to Big Brothers Big Sisters of the Midlands out in western Nebraska. Yeah, exactly.
Central Nebraska.
In all seriousness, though, that game, divine providence, the Lord looking down on us. I thought, look at us, look at what we're doing.
Because we tried to. Yes, we tried to will it into existence, right? I tried to take an active role after taking a passive role. Hadn't worked with so many of the storybook endings. And so, okay, what if I create a storybook ending and God's like, ooh, I see what you're doing here. Yeah, I like that move. I can work my way in here and make this happen. And, we put, according to the people might remember, according to the encouragement from Milt's son, he said, remember him by putting an irresponsibly large wager
bet
on Nebraska. So we did that with some money.
Some of the money. We donated most of the money.
We donated most of the other, but we had to do the one part.
Yeah.
And it looked like they were going to win, and we were going to win that extra money. And again, storybook ending. So that part of it was there. I think what probably holds it up, Josh, I mean, it's got the elements, man. It's got the internal
It's got the elements.
The fact that the bowl game was already out, right? I think that was certainly a part of it. But for me, that's it. That's all I can think of.
In terms of why it's not number one?
Yeah, that's why for me, I might even put 2019 Iowa maybe ahead of it for me, just because
and that one is a little bit lower.
Yeah, that one was a little bit lower, but that takes a bit away from it. That's the only thing I can really think of.
There's no game, Jack, on this list that has as many combined points in terms of our two big categories: post-game win probability and max second half win probability. In this game, this is the only game that climbs above 96% in terms of post-game win probability. This is the only game. So this gets a perfect 10 out of 10. Nebraska had a 95% chance at one point in the second half. That was their max number to win the football game. So that is a 9 out of 10. So that's 19 points right there that went to that. The stuff that kept it down in terms of what you just talked about, the game importance, those types of things. But this game, Nebraska, I mean, we barely talked about the actual performance. Great start. They go right down the field. They're scoring touchdowns. Logan Smothers starts this game because Adrian Martinez was banged up throughout that year, and they are up at one point in time in the second half, 21-6. Iowa gets a field goal. It's 21-9. And then, we've talked throughout the episodes recently, most famous plays on the list. We talked about the onside kick versus Northwestern. We talked about the Andy Janovich rush against Wisconsin in 2015. The blocked punt. You want to talk about a play. When I was in the stadium, you were in the stadium. Everybody knew that the game was over, even though it only makes it 21-15 because Iowa goes for 2 and they don't get it. It's 21-15. We all knew that Nebraska, there was no way in hell that they were going to win the game at that point in time.
And by the time we were experienced enough in how this went, that once that happened, you could feel it. There's just, I don't know how else to describe it, but Nebraska fans know what I'm talking about, where if you looked at another game that didn't involve Nebraska in the same situation, same time remaining, right? Same quality teams, score, everything else. You would say, oh, well, that team's still going to win, right? barring something crazy. But after those plays that you've talked about, and we've talked about for years now, it's kind of like you just knew, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if a fan can have a self-fulfilling prophecy, but maybe the players felt that way too eventually, and it started to bleed into the program.
Yeah.
It's the only way that I can think of it.
And I misspoke. They make the extra point, and so it's 21-16, but then they get a safety, and suddenly it's 21-18, and then they get a field goal, and it's 21-all. And so, like, think about, Jack, what's that, 4 or 5 scores that Iowa had to get? And so that's why I keep referring to it as the slow-motion car crash, because I've watched a lot of comebacks. We've talked about a lot of comebacks in the Chronicles. There is not one that is as unique as this one, where it takes that many scores to make it 21-6 to 21-21. And meanwhile, Nebraska's offense is turning the ball over. They're getting safeties, all of these things. And so this offense that for three and a half quarters, whatever it was, they're moving the ball great. They're punching it in. They can't do anything in the fourth quarter as Logan Smothers just really struggles.
It's kind of like, a baseball game in the 9th inning, you're down by 7 runs, and you come back and win the game only with singles, right?
Yeah.
No grand slam, no home run, nothing like that. So that's kind of what's like it. This was another one, looking back at it, I forget that Nebraska had multiple chances too at the end, right? To score a couple of these games. Sometimes I've combined possessions into one possession. We talked about that with 2015 Wisconsin as well. That was for Wisconsin, but Nebraska had more than one bite at the apple at the end of this one that I had forgotten.
They did, and it ends with Logan Smothers throwing an interception. And I just, the sad trudging out of the stadium that people did, because we knew that Frost was coming back, right? Like, that decision had already been made a few weeks prior. And so this was totally pride, beating a rival, ruining their season, making them feel bad, all of those types of things. And it just ends with an absolute gut punch. And it's not number 1. It is number 6 on the list, which is still incredible to me. So that means we have one more episode to go, Jack.
I know, now I'm just kind of doing this on the spot, but I can think of 2 right away that I know are on there right off the bat that we haven't done yet. And I'm sure if I sat and thought about it more, I can think of another one. I probably missed a Northwestern game around there somewhere. I bet that might be on here too.
Interesting.
Just because I'm starting to realize, as I talked about earlier, I have a hard time separating the Northwestern games, and feels like I might have missed one of those. But I mean, I know 2 of them from the one from the Rhule era is still on there, right? At least one from the Rhule era. We've got one from the 2021 season. I know that's still on there. We probably have a random Northwestern game.
You've hit on 3.
Random Northwestern game that is in there.
And there's 2 others.
And there are 2 others.
When you flip over the piece of paper, you're going to see them, and you're going to realize immediately, oh, yeah, we haven't talked about those games just yet.
Oh, yeah, number 4. I assumed we had already talked about that.
Nope.
And, oh, wow. No, number 1. It was in my top 5 probably, but all right, this is the first time you're seeing this in real time. Top 3, I believed were going to be all in the top 5. I did not have 4 and 5 on my radar for this high.
All right. So coming up on the next episode, we get to the top 5. And we discuss, the ultimate pain, and we try to figure out if the math got it right for the games that are inside the top 5 and what is ultimately number 1. All right, Jack, I keep saying this at the end of every episode. Can't wait to do this with you. Let's do it one more time, shall we?
Okay, let's get one final time, and then that's it. Forever!
Forever. And then the Chronicles and this whole era of football ends.
Yep.
Coming up next week.
All right.